Namaskar, welcome to Prakash on Basics. I am Prakash Zog. Last time we looked into the basic functions of how the heart works. We are going to move ahead and keep talking about the heart a little more. Please realize that the design and working of the heart is a marvel of evolution. Complex yet fascinating. We need to understand it logically from different angles in different steps. I mentioned that everything works on electricity, on nerve impulses, on neurons within our body, and they are all controlled by the brain. But there is a hitch. We've seen so many film clips of heart transplants and depicted in documentary films and other places. The heart is removed, it's still beating, and then it is placed in another body attached to it, and it's still working. But we have not connected the nerve fibers and other issues. So how is it working? What implies is that heart must be generating its own impulses, that too at a desired rate, right from the birth, as I told you, till even in the replaced body. It therefore means that it has an independent system of its own, and this electric system is known as the intrinsic cardiac conduction system. The brain does not keep on sending signals to the heart because that's a requirement throughout lifelong. So rather than that, the duty is assigned to the heart itself to a large extent. They generate their own electric potentials, impulses, and that too is an extremely complex situation. So the brain does not completely control the working of the heart. There is of course a nerve known as the vagus nerve from the brain going alongside the heart, which controls the heart rate to some extent. So the heart then functions to some extent controlled by the brain. The heart rate could rise and fall due to emotional conditions or the chemical setup within the body, or it could be controlled by various other techniques also, such as the various techniques used in India, the yogic sadhanas and other methods. So when the heart is actually transplanted to somebody else, it still keeps on working, and it works only at one rate, 90 to 100, which is the one that is generated within the heart itself. So the heart's cells generate their own signals and are known as the pacemaker cells. Remember the diagram I showed you last time. Let's look at the next logical extension of this. In the original diagram there were 4 chambers obviously, but there are 4 more major nerve centers. The first one is this one here. It is known as the sinoarterial node, SA node. It is near the opening of the superior vena cava that brings in all the used up blood into the right atrium. This SA node is not inside but on the surface naturally of a part and parcel of the muscle of the right atrium. Then as you go down the line, you can see here the crossroads of the septum, the atria and the ventricles, at that junctional point there is one more nerve center, and that is known as the AV node, the atrioventricular node. And from that node point downwards here you would see a stem of nerve cells. It was detected by a person called a biologist called His, and so it is known as the bundle of His. And just as it goes down all along and starts turning up from the apex below here, there are some fibers that come out and spread throughout the two ventricles, and these are known as the Purkinje fibers. So that's the additional part than the four chambers that we talked of. The valves that are present, the tricuspid and the bicuspid valve in the central region, they are all in one single plane practically, and the other outlets from the ventricles are also in the same plane, and that is the plane in which the AV node is present. These cells that are present at this particular level are non-conducting as far as electricity is concerned, and that's a very special purpose. I'll come to that. Along the septum, that is the dividing wall, the nerve bundle, that is the bundle of His, splits into two regions and starts moving down to up. The branches of the two groups spread more in terms of the complete region of the ventricles. The left ventricle walls are a little thicker than the right ventricle walls, and that's quite logical, because the left ventricle is supposed to pump the blood throughout the body, and so it has to do a lot more work, while the right ventricle has to send only the blood to the lungs and back again. So the pressure developed and the energy required in the left ventricle is higher than that in the right ventricle. So we have these 4 points. The SA node produces impulses at the rate of fluctuating between 60 to 100 depending upon the heart rate. The VA node, that is the one in the center, generates signals at the rate of 40 to around 60 per minute, and the Purkinje cells also transmit these signals roughly between 20 to 40 signals per minute. And they are not just random, they are suitably synchronized and extremely well coordinated, and their main control obviously is in the sinoarterial or the SA node. Please remember what I told you. Any electrical impulse causes the muscle to contract. So wherever the signals reach, the muscles there will begin to contract. Suppose all of them contract together, then obviously the pressure in the heart will build up, it might just about explode. So you can't let that happen. So it has to take place in an extremely controlled manner. From the SA node, there are 3 groups of neuron cells that go out. There is one chain that enters into the right atrium, so right next to it, from here to the other side, and that is a set of extremely fast conducting neurons. So the signal practically instantaneously reaches the other side, and then both the atria contract simultaneously at the same time as the signal reaches. Then there are 2 roughly spread out bundles that reach the AV node, and there is a slight time delay because the conduction process is a little slow, and that causes the signal to reach the AV node a little later than the original signal starting point when the compression of the atria has started off. Again, the bundle of His connects very fast, and the signal from the AV node travels to the apex, that is the bottom, and starts spreading upwards pretty fast simultaneously. Why all this confusion? Two or three things must be realized. When the atria contract, the blood has to enter or has to be pushed into the ventricles. If the ventricles start contracting at the same time, then that transfer process will not take place. So it is quite natural that the signal and the compression process of the ventricles must start a little later, roughly around 0.1 of a second. It gives enough time for the blood to reach inside. And there is one more aspect that must be remembered. Once the cell, the AV node is in the center, so it might as well start sending the signals from there itself. Why send it all the way down and up? The reason is quite obvious. As you can see from the diagram, all the openings at the walls, the bicuspid, the tricuspid, and the aortal wall and the pulmonary wall, all of them are in the same plane. If the compression process starts there itself, the compression will move from there downwards, and there will be very little possibility of the blood actually entering the valves and going through. It's like a toothpaste. I want to squeeze and take the toothpaste out. If I squeeze at the mouth itself, I'm not going to get the toothpaste coming out. So what should I do? I should press from below so that the causes the pressure, causes all the toothpaste to come out. Same way the blood has to be pumped also. So the squeezing process starts from the lower, that is the apex point, and it squeezes upwards so that all the blood is pushed through the valves. I told you last time that simultaneously there is a slight twisting motion, and it ensures that all the blood that is there in the ventricles has been pushed through the valves out wherever required, either in the lungs or in the body. And the valves don't allow the bicuspid and the tricuspid don't allow the blood to go back to the atria. And once this happens, it takes a certain amount of time. That's roughly around 0.4 of a second. And the cycle starts repeating itself again. Again, the two atria contract, and simultaneously both of them are contracting. So one is sending down the blood into the ventricles, left ventricle and the right ventricle. When the ventricles contract, the pumping results into transfer either to the lungs or to the body. So it's a pair, second pair, first pair, second pair, and that's how it works. It's a pump. It's more like an engine, and many of us who are aware of engineering are aware that this is like a two-stroke system that's working, and two sets of engines that are working. But it's not like the multiple engines that we have. Engineering people would remember that it's not, the power stroke is not matched when you have multiple pistons. They are cycled out. That doesn't happen here. Both the atria contract together, ventricles contract together, and the process continues. And this is how both of them working in unison together, helping out each other with extremely synchronized pattern, so that no additional pressure is built, the signal coming from the down upwards, so that all the blood gets transferred in the right manner, the valves opening and closing at the right time, realize how complex this process must be. And if the heart rate increases, all the process has to be speeded up, but still maintained in the same order. Sometimes it's difficult to accept that evolution can develop things to such a beautiful extent. But the very fact that 2-chambered has moved on to the 3-chambered hearts and now the 4-chambered heart like ours indicates that evolution definitely has a major role to play in all this. That's fine, all that is inside. How do we know about all this? So there must be some special methods by which all this process can be studied, because if it goes wrong, our major organ that supplies energy to the body is not going to function, and there are going to be a lot of problems. We need to understand what those problems are. We need to understand how the information about the heart is brought out and shown in front of us, and that is in terms of a graph known as the ECG or the EKG and its corresponding interpretations. But that's something that I would talk of next time, because that's equally interesting, because many of us have seen those ECGs and all those waves and wiggly lines, and what do they mean. That detail we will talk of next time. If you have liked whatever I have said, if you have appreciated whatever I have said, understand your heart, understand the complexity that nature has provided by which we work so efficiently. A machine that starts working so many years before and continues till our last breath. That's the beauty of the heart. That's the complexity of heart. Till we meet again to understand the interpretations and the problems of this heart. That's going to be 15 days from today. Namaskar.